Okay. Dr. Vequist, what are your thoughts on the possibility of federal workers here specifically in Bexar County, potentially getting laid off once the Trump administration gets into office next month?
So from what I understand, most of the scope of the Doge campaign, which Trump is the department, which Trump is establishing with Elon Musk and Vivek as the heads, probably will be focused more on federal. However, there is going to be some impacts to states and also counties and cities. For example, there was just in 2023 alone, Department of Health and Human Services paid out over $100 billion in improper payments to Medicare and Medicaid programs. And as you may be aware, some of those payments go to, for example, county and city organizations. And this, by the way, the $100 billion improper payments was identified earlier this year by the Government Accountability Organization within the federal government. So we know that these cuts are going to affect a variety of entities, not only the federal government, but also state and local and city organizations.
So you think people should be worried, or should they um, be concerned, or should they just kind of look at it? Because I think what is the percentage here in San Antonio? Just a little over 5% are federal workers here, maybe 6% in El Paso. So it's not a huge amount, but it's enough that could affect obviously a number of families who are maybe they're single income families and they may have children. So, what are your thoughts? What should we tell them?
Well, so the one of the things that we do know is that there is quite a bit of waste and lack of operational efficiencies within the federal government, and unfortunately, those cuts have been needing to be made for a while in terms of the type of expenditures the federal government is doing. There is the good possibility that some of the departments, which are currently located in Washington, D.C., will be placed in other areas of the country. And if that happens, that will be a helpful boost to the economies in those regions where those departments go to. And there is an expectation that Texas and possibly San Antonio will get some of those, particularly anything related to the DoD. Certain departments within those may end up coming out here.
Well, and I was just going to ask you, a lot of those federal jobs are military,
Correct.
postal workers.
Yeah.
Um, should people It's interesting that article had said, this could mean you're a postal worker. I don't think your postal worker is making six figures per se. However, um, could that mean cuts to the postal service or something like that, or kind of a reorganization?
Yeah, so there is interesting news again just recently in the news from down in Argentina, where the libertarian president had decided just recently to privatize their postal service, and so that is a possibility that may be looked into by the Trump administration. Definitely, Elon and Vivek have libertarian leaning philosophies about that. The In terms of the how AI will play in this is a very, if you will, important and interesting aspect of it. Not everybody knows, and it was just news a couple of weeks ago that Elon had worked with NVIDIA, which is the leading manufacturer of chips, particularly AI chips, to develop something called Colossus, which is the world's largest AI supercomputer. It's located in Memphis, Tennessee, has over 1,000 of these NVIDIA processing units, and they're expecting to expand that to potentially 200,000 in the near future. So it's the largest AI supercomputer that is currently out there, and it is, of course, associated with Musk's X property, which is called Grok, which is a large language model AI that's you can find on the X.com site. So that is probably going to be used to help make decisions in the future around what types of positions and what types of cuts may be made. And actually, I ended up going out to Grok and asking it what types of efficiencies could be gained if it were to go after government spending. And it had some very interesting suggestions. Would you like to hear a couple of them?
Sure. So basically, you're saying folks like Elon Musk and they're asking these AI, I don't know what you call them, computers or apps or what have you, where can we cut? Where can we save some money? And then it's spitting out information, pulling from all different resources, right? And saying
Correct.
this is where we see A, B, C, and X, Y, Z.
Correct. Yeah. And so
Okay.
that's exactly what will probably happen is I know that Vivek put out a call on X in regards to hiring people for Dodge, DOGE, to be able to help them in the decision making. But obviously, these AI tools can do these things very efficiently. And there's already, for example, Grok mentioned that in the last year or so, an AI platform recently looked at 8,000 known drug molecules in one day, something that would have taken about 15 years using traditional methods. So you could see it being potentially used in the FDA. In terms of budgeting and finance, AI has been found in a Deloitte study to increase forecasting accuracy by about 20 to 30%. When it comes to fraud detection, as I mentioned, for example, $100 billion in Medicare and Medicaid payments, some of that which came to Texas and to San Antonio. So those types of frauds can be detected. There's the AI in one case study done by MasterCard showed a 250% increase in fraud detection analysis, and even things like chatbots for being able to give out better information and in a quicker way for potentially people that are calling government agencies, for example, like Social Security Administration. There's a suggestion by Juniper Research that that could save up to $8 billion to companies that are currently have people that are answering those calls, and a number of those calls could be handled by a chatbot. So the overall, their AI is predicting potentially easily a 20 to 30% improvement in terms of reducing expenses or cost. And obviously, many of those, unfortunately, are going to be positions. And one of the biggest areas that there's probably an opportunity to cut, even though it's a semi-governmental organization, is the U.S. Postal Service, which again had a very bad year in terms of the total losses.
Yeah. And that's it's one of those tools where it's great, and as long as people know how to kind of process or
Yeah.
even put in the information, right, it's very helpful, and it's very useful. But if you don't know how to take in the information, process it, or even put it in, then it's kind of worthless.
Absolutely.
But I think you bring up a really good point, and that's probably going to be with Elon Musk heading or being part of that department. No doubt that'll definitely
Agree.
be a huge part. Okay. Anything else that you wanted to add that I didn't ask you about?
So I think it's rather fascinating this kind of day and age that we're in, and where we have these very sophisticated tools that are able to access large amounts of information and be able to, based on that, summarize, categorize, or even do projections and forecast. Interestingly, when it comes to the federal government, and whether that's positions in Washington, D.C., or in Texas, or even here in San Antonio, um, almost all the government agencies produce a lot of data. They produce a lot of information. And there is perhaps a significant opportunity here. In fact, in many cases, much better than you would find even in the private sector, because these government agencies produce so much data, so many reports, so many statistics, that the for an AI, this is kind of like a dream job, is to be able to analyze this and determine where there's efficiencies. When it comes to the efficiencies in terms of cutting jobs, I suspect that that is going to say that there are efficiencies to be received from this. I suspect, based on some of the numbers I've been looking at, that just because of, for example, the amount of people that are working remotely in the Washington, D.C. area, that's going to be the first cuts. I suspect the cuts to places like Texas and San Antonio are going to be minor at, at the most.
I hope so. I hope so. Um, I don't know, and off subject, well, kind of off subject, but I
Yes.
wanted to say, did you read that article where it was saying that eventually people are going to be working like 3.5 days per week, and
Yes. Yes.
I think it may even be like from home half the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's really come to that where people just don't want that 5-day work week anymore, and they
Yeah.
don't. So I don't know what people are going to be doing. I don't.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating aspect. The in technology management, which is an area of academic research and has been for many years, there's this fascinating thing that's happened, which is when we see societies which invest heavily in technology. I'll just use, for example, Korea and Japan. And if you've ever been to Korea or Japan, you see that the technology is very pervasive in many aspects of their lives. They're actually some of the hardest working people on the face of the earth. They actually, in many cases, work more hours than Americans. And Americans are some of the hardest working, that work many more hours than Europeans. So we've seen this kind of technology advancement in almost every aspect of our lives, but it has led to actually people doing, in many cases, more enjoyable work. So what we're seeing is many more people in the creative economy that have an Etsy site, if not full-time, part-time, that they do. And it's something that they consider to be a passion. So even though technology has expanded, if you will, our work hours, it's also made it so that we can do things that we enjoy more often. So I suspect for people that love what they're doing, that they're going to have these tools which allow them to be, if you will, more productive, but actually might spend a little bit more time on it. In other words, you're working during a vacation, whereas, say, 20 years ago, when you went to a vacation, you didn't have your cell phone, you didn't have your laptop, you just went on vacation, spent time with the family. Now you'll be going, hey, I can just jump into this, tonight and do something during my vacation. So, unfortunately, I think that it's technology, although it helps our lives in many ways, when we're passionate about the work we do, unfortunately, the work never stops.
Right. It never stops. It's a love-hate relationship, right? And then
Yeah,
even with the whole finding the passion of doing your work, right? It gives people more longevity
it
in
does.
in their chosen
Yes, it does.
field. But anyway, it's always a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.